Hey wood finishers, welcome back. Talking today about pore filling, and so a couple of products, lots of tools to get prepped for it. Starting with an ash board, which is a really great example of a open pored wood. This technique works best for filling in those voids that are the cell structure of the wood and being able to apply a finish on top of that to reflect more light, basically. So in essence, making this thing look like it's flat and glassy smooth. Without doing this, there's going to be a lot of undulations when that finish is applied and cured and either rubbed out or finished. But by doing this, it adds a whole nother element to the wow factor. A lot of luthiers do this when they build instruments to fill in the pores, and this piece is really fantastically beautiful just because of that shine or that glimmer. I think a lot of large tables, dining tables, conference tables have also gotten this treatment for similar reasons. I think it kind of lends to the beauty of the piece, and you really start to see the wood and a little bit less of the texture. Now, there's no requirement. Some people prefer this, and you all have been woodworking long enough, I'm assuming, to know that that there is no universal yes or no in woodworking. So some people are going to say yes, it's the greatest thing in the world. Some are going to say no, this is horrible, never do that. Anyway, I'm going to show you the techniques of how to apply it. Okay, so ashwood here, I've done the sanding, actually did card scraper on this one. And so from the card scraper on this board, I'll be able to apply the pore filler. One pore filler that I don't have in front of me here, but a lot of people use epoxy to fill, and people swear by this. It's arguably the most durable pore filler. So talking about epoxy or resin as one option. Second would be oil-based pore fillers, and oil-based definitely has its place and benefits. The examples that I have here, these are all water-based, and so downsides of this is that it dries very, very quickly. An oil-based pore filler could take forever to, well, not forever, but much longer in comparison than the water-based. So I'm going to show different examples of the water-based here. Oil-based is good. It just, I typically don't use those. And my finishing style, I typically don't do a lot of pore filling, but I have done it enough to know what to watch out for. So those are the options. Some people also use egg whites for pore filling, and I guess that's good. I guess I just prefer my eggs to become omelets than they do to go into my finishes. And everybody has an opinion on this. Try them all out, and then you'll know. But okay, so this one, color tone, and it claims to be clear, and it's a water-based grain filler. And you'll notice in here it's more of a soft wax consistency, and that's pretty consistent with some of the other ones as well. Aqua Coat, they have something that looks almost identical in the fact that it has kind of that consistency. Both of which are water-based, as I mentioned. And I think this is the same product, just a little older packaging. This is a gel clear, this is clear grain filler, and I'm not sure if there is a distinction between the two, but anyway, these ones I would argue are virtually the same. We get into this one, obviously a Balin product, and they're a great finishing supplier. You'll notice that there's a difference in two ways. Number one is the color, and these things come in different colors. So this one is claiming to be neutral, again water-based. They have darker woods, medium tone wood, so depending on what it is you're getting into. The neutral was attractive to me when I purchased this because I could color this material to make it fit whatever material, whatever wood I'm going to be using. And so I'll show you an example of that in a later video. So that I'm going to hold off until the next round. Let's start with one of these. So I'm going to use this aqua coat business, and in order to do that, a couple of things to talk about. Number one is there's going to be some element of sanding here, so we need to remove any of that material from sanding that would have been packed into the pores. And I just like a really stiff brush, something that we can get in here and kind of scrub out all these pores. Some people talk about compressed air. You can get in here and start blowing air in these things and then it'll clear. And I think that's probably not wrong, but I've heard the counterpoint to doing that so many times that I think I've just become reluctant to trying it. People talk about the compressed air will kind of pack that material into the pores and it'll have a greater tendency to hold in that position. So with this, I get in there and I can scrub the stuff out, and I'm pretty happy with the results there. If you have a really soft brush, this one has a lot more flexibility to it. It just doesn't really get in there and scrub. And if you don't have options of brushes here, I would not recommend a steel bristle brush because these ones create really nasty gouges or scratches into the wood, but a nylon bristle brush would do just as well as this one. Only difference is that the bristles on a nylon brush are probably a little bit thicker than this, so this one's a bit more of a fine tool to get in there. Don't use steel. Okay, so once I've done that, then a couple of things for application. I'm going to apply it with a little bit of burlap, and this burlap, this is a great material here to really pack that stuff in, and I don't really know a different way of saying it. It allows you to work the material into the pores. I would stay away from a cotton rag or paper towels or any of those things. Paper towels I think are going to be a mess because they're just going to start to separate as you're applying the stuff down, and that could become part of the piece, which doesn't sound terribly attractive. Don't use the cotton because it really doesn't pack the stuff in as well. I will be using this later to kind of clear the stuff up. All right, so burlap first. Once I've done that, kind of distribute it. Then I'm going to need a spreader of some kind, and these you can get usually anywhere you can get a body filler or a Bondo product. This is where you're going to find these. And I got these, a set of a bunch of different sizes at Harbor Freight. These are a great option for doing this. But I want some rigidity here, I want some stiffness, so when I do kind of push this in, that this is going to give me some force. The other thing that I've had forever and ever, which I like instead of a spreader, and I have no idea what this is called or where to find it, but it's a piece of plexiglass. It doesn't have to be orange. Plexiglass here that's being impregnated with a little bit of a rubber gasket on the edge. And so anything that the spreader would do, this one easily can come in and do the same thing. If anybody knows a source for this, that would be fantastic. I've had this one forever, and I didn't even know a different resource for finding that. Okay. So regardless of whatever filler you're using, I would recommend gloves. All right. So good amount here, and then you'll kind of notice, or hopefully you can catch this in the video, the stuff kind of just melts as it's being worked around, which is really great. And circular motions are kind of the secret or the trick to doing this. At the very least, I want to go across the grain. If I were to apply this and go with the grain, you're going to have a tendency of kind of scraping or pulling out any material that would otherwise have been packed into the pores. So circular motions, and compared to the Balin's products, this actually stays much more fluid for longer, which which I'll show you here, as I said, in the upcoming video. So continue to do this until I get the entire surface saturated. That looks pretty decent. All right, let's say that's good. I've got a strong light coming from that side of the camera, which helps me to really see if I've missed anything, but this looks good. I'm happy with this. All right, conversations about this stuff. If I were to use a spreader, this is probably a good place to transition to this thing, and same rules apply. I don't want to go with the grain. Across the grain is okay, but I found that going diagonally, I can really starts to pack the stuff in. And if I'm going in this orientation here this time, I'm going to go a second pass, making perpendicular passes for the most part. Alright, and that is pretty good. It looks nice and even here. I can tell that there are some areas that are starting to dry already, which is good. But that's the idea. So once I've done this, I will, and with anything that's water-based, it's always a good idea to put the lid on as quickly as you possibly can. Okay, so I'm going to let this totally dry, and I'll come back here in a little bit. It starts to feel a little waxy already on this, but it's, yeah, it's getting really close. So I'll leave it for probably another 2 hours or so, just to be safe. And then come back with some light sanding, and if I've sanded at this point, if I weren't using a scraper, I'd probably sand to around 120, 150, and then do the pore filling, and then continue with my sanding to wherever I'm going to end up. So if I end at 150 and then do the pore filling, I'll go to 180 and then 220, and then that's ready. Biggest part of the conversation about water-based versus oil-based fillers. If I'm going to be using a water-based top coat, then I need to be really cautious about what type of pore filler I'm using. If I use an oil-based pore filler, there's concern about the adhesion for the water-based finish on top of that. But water-based here, if I go with an oil-based finish, I'm going to be fine. And water-based on top of a water-based pore filler, no problems at all. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. Catch you in the next video.